This is tone 40 on an object, and Len, actually, before I go on with this, Len buttonholed me and pointed out that with the training routines, you don't just do it once. You do hundreds of hours of this stuff, and you keep redoing it, redoing it, and redoing it, all the way through Scientology.
That's a hypnotic technique, by the way, repetition.
Yeah.
Repetition, monotony, rhythm, back from the
Mimicry,
20s.
fixation,
Over,
confusion.
over.
Yeah.
Auditors are supposed to do it daily.
Yeah, an auditor should do it daily. I mean, the first 9 months I was in Scientology, I did training routines every day, probably for an hour or two each day. I got quite good at it. And we have a couple of relatives of Ron Hubbard in the room. Not going to point to them, not going to let anybody know, but one of them took me aside and explained conversations he'd had with his father, and I said, well, we're going to be doing some stuff next, which it says on the official bulletin, L. Ron Hubbard, but it was actually done by L. Ron Hubbard Jr. And the story about it is that they were doing this congress in Washington, and they had some rowdy students, and so L. Ron Hubbard Sr. said to his son, work out some way of controlling them. And this is the one. I don't have an ashtray, actually. Isn't that daunting?
You want to try this?
Oh, look at this.
Yeah, we can use that.
Innovation.
We normally have another chair as well.
Would normally have another chair as well.
Let's get another chair.
This is taking forever.
Just put it right here.
Thank you.
Just right here.
But make it so they can see it.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd
Maybe
like
we
to
should
thank,
put it there.
Okay.
I'd like to thank Spike Robinson for making jokes. Making ashtrays stand up since 1957. This is normally done in a separate course room because lunacy belongs in a separate course room. Again, in terms of the loaded language, tone 40, that means intention. It means being able to just... Tone 40 is the top of the Scientology tone scale, or it's top of one of them. There's one that actually goes to 800, but we won't talk about that, which is serenity of beingness. And it always used to interest me that tone 40, as it came from Sea Org members, was more like rage. You know, there was no serenity involved. So tone 40 on an object, commands, stand up, thank you, sit down on that chair, thank you. These are the only commands used.
I'm going to feel silly doing this.
Feeling silly is not permitted, that's a flunk.
I know.
Student sitting in chair, facing chair which has on it an ashtray.
Yeah, normally he'd be sitting here facing the ashtray, but since we're doing it this way, this will suffice.
Squirreling.
Yeah, totally swirling this.
Coach sitting in chair, facing...
I've got the squirrel to prove it.
Right down. Coach sitting in chair, facing chair, occupied by student, and chair occupied by ashtray. Whatever that means. To make student clearly achieve tone 40 commands, to clarify intentions as different from words, to start student on road,
Move the camera.
to handling objects and people with postulates. We're now, this, you know, this, you might only have been in Scientology for 3 or 4 days and you're suddenly being thrown into this stuff. Postulates. This is one of my favorite redefinitions on Hubbard's part. A postulate is a basic philosophic premise for anybody who, you know, wants to get clever about it. I don't. But it actually means a wish. And you persuade people, yeah, it's like this, you can make wishes and the universe will do what you want. But by
Wait a minute, isn't that called The Secret?
Yes, it becomes a secret.
Magical thinking.
Yeah,
And
one after another. This notion,
Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and you can get a Porsche. Oh,
Yeah.
that's Soka Gakkai. That's
Or
a
when
different
you
cult.
buy
Sorry.
a Mercedes-Benz. To obtain obedience, not wholly based on spoken commands. Why didn't I realize when I first read this what was going on? TR8 is begun with, and it's this number 8, which is always magical for Hubbard, it's infinity stood up. TR8 is begun with student holding the ashtray, which he manually makes execute the commands he gives. Under the heading of training, stress is included the various ways and means of getting the student to achieve the goals of this training step. During the early part of this drill, say in the first coaching session, the student, sorry, an Americanism there, I have difficulty with that. Say in the first coaching session, the student should be coached in the basic parts of the drill one at a time. First, locate the space which includes himself and the ashtray, but not more than that much. So locate the space in which you are and the ashtray is. You can tell us when you're there.
Exactly.
I'm here.
Good. Second, have him locate the object in that space.
It's there.
Where?
There.
Oh, good. That's good. Third, have him command the object in the loudest, oh dear, Christian, in the loudest possible voice he can muster. This is called shouting. Thank you for that, Spike.
That's in the right.
That's, yeah, I believe you. The coach's pattern would run something like this. Locate the space,
Right? So, which we just ran
Yep.
through, locate the space.
locate the object in that space.
Locate the object in the
There.
space. Good. Command it as loudly as you can.
Yep.
And your command is stand up, thank you. Sit down in that chair, thank you. Those are the commands you give the ashtray.
Yep.
And you make the ashtray do it as you're giving it the command, okay?
Yes.
Good. So, command it as loudly as you can.
Flunk, flunk, flunk.
All right? Command it as loudly as you can.
Stand up. Thank you. Sit down in that chair. Thank you.
That's good.
Good.
Very good.
That would be done for a really long time.
Should we carry on until everybody runs out?
When shouting is completed, then have the student use a normal tone of voice, with a lot of coach attention on the student getting the intention into the object.
Stand up. Thank you. Sit down in that chair. Thank you.
Excellent. I mean, you would normally do this over and over again until the coach is satisfied that you're doing it properly, or you can't speak anymore.
So this is conditioning, programming, mind control. Change the behavior, you'll change the thoughts and the feelings. The new beliefs are being implanted with the loaded language. And the person's complying, not realizing he's going to be asked to sign a billion-year contract.
Exactly, when we're all done.
Next, have the student do the drill while using the wrong command.
Come again?
Like you could give it a command like roses are red. Okay,
I
those
see.
are the words you use.
You can say,
But
sit
you-
down on that chair and pick it up.
Right. Yep. You could give it backwards. Whatever you say, but your intention has to be
And I
for
still
it to
acknowledge
stand
with a
up.
thank you.
That's right. But even the acknowledgement, the thank you, has to be different words.
Yeah, you could say, Johnny Goodbugger.
Right. Or lollipololly, and then whatever words come to mind.
Right.
Okay. Good. Start.
Eat spaghetti. Change your glasses. Fly across the room. Tie your shoes.
Good. That's exactly how it would run, just like that.
This is
That's weird.
a hypnotic induction. Because you're dissociating where you're keeping the cult intention and your words are different. They're creating a split of consciousness.
Yep, absolutely. And next, have the student do the drill silently, putting the intention into the object without even thinking the words of the command or the acknowledgement. Think you can do that? Because we will be checking your mind to see if you're thinking it.
Give me a moment.
Great. I hope everybody felt his intention there.
Yeah, but what you were saying, Chris, is this goes on for hours.
This goes on and on and on. By the time we got to this point, we would have been sitting here all day. You know, between the shouting and the normal tone of voice and then the wrong commands and then this, you know, he'd be in a frame of mind where he was just lightning bolts into that thing of intention.
And now, to go through that, Chris ball baits him while he's doing it silently. And he says, start and flunk. And that's what goes on. So
I do this silently.
Yeah,
while
you
he's-
do it silently.
While you're
and I will
nattering
bull
at
bait
me.
you. That's right. Okay, ready? All right, start. I don't see any intention there. Blank.
Start again.
Okay, start. I don't see any intention there. Man, your intention is, that's like tone 3 and blank. Okay, anyway, so he would do this until he didn't have any reactions to anything I was saying.
And it says that you do it until the drill is flat, which means there'll be no reaction at all. So you're continuously being dissociated from your own emotions. I did these drills with a professional actor who actually married Bette Midler, so I don't think that me giving the drills was associated with that anyway. And he's the only person in 9 years of coaching people on these drills who had no reactions whatsoever at any point. And I kind of went away, and I remember seeing an interview with Peter Sellers, being there again, and Peter Sellers was complaining that he didn't really know who he was because he filled parts. And it made me think, maybe this is something that's happening to us, that our identity is being shifted so that we don't have our own emotions anymore. And that was what was happening.
Very important point. And it brings up the whole idea of scripting, and that identity is normally a set of scripts internally generated about who we are, that we're a man, that we're Jewish, that we're American, that we're this and that. And that if you recode the part and play the part and then forget who you were before, you become that new identity. Sure. It's another way of thinking about it.
It is. We're having to race through a little bit, but I can't resist this one.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we'd like, Christian, we'd like you to think the thought, I am a wildflower.
I'm sorry, you know what's in my head right now? The producers, Mel Brooks' film.
Springtime.
Yeah. Oh, this is terrible.
Think the thought.
And what do you want me to do at the same time?
No, just
think the thought, I am a wildflower.
Got that thought?
Yes.
Good.
Weird.
Okay, good. So now, think the thought you're sitting in the chair. Just,
Okay.
good. Now, imagine that thought being in the ashtray.
Okay.
Good. Now, imagine that ashtray containing that thought in its substance.
Got it.
Good. Okay, now get the ashtray thinking it is an ashtray.
It's having trouble with this one.
Got it.
Good. Okay. Now get the ashtray intending to go on being an ashtray.
Okay.
Good.
I think
Okay.
the ashtray is having a problem with that one.
Now get the ashtray intending to remain where it is.
Yes.
Good. Have the ashtray end that cycle. Finish that off.
I don't understand.
Oh, you just had the ashtray think a whole bunch of things and intend a whole bunch of things, right?
Yes?
Good. So now have the ashtray finish that. It's done. Get the ashtray thinking that it's done with that.
Done.
Good. All right. Now put in the ashtray the intention to remain where it is.
Yes.
Okay, good. Good. So the whole idea of that is to help you with the drill to differentiate between, putting an intention into something, and it's a little mental exercise to try to get you to see the difference between those.
But as you're doing it, I'm learning, and what that's doing is setting people up for body thetan beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? Taking part of your consciousness, projecting it onto an inanimate object, projecting meaning into that. It's just the total setup for the increment of the indoctrination of the later stages.
We're going to skip till now.
And just to say it, anyone who isn't in Scientology listening to this stuff goes, what the? What?
If I can just comment as well,
People standing and doing this?
if I can just comment as well, I found myself thinking in terms of being able to extend that control outwards on other in other situations. You know, that this is something you can do to other people.
Right.
And objects.
And objects, of course, but people.
Get very busy kind of getting all things around you.
Needless to say, on the
attend things.
continuum, this is not normal or healthy.
Oh,
Really?
Really?
okay, moving on swiftly from ashtrays.
Yep.
And we're very sorry for what we did to you. Oh,
We have a relationship.
we're going to have a quick crack at the Book 1 auditing method. Now, in 1951, Hubbard cancelled this method because he says a pre-clear, after he closes his eyes, will begin to flutter his eyelids. This is a symptom of the very lightest level of hypnotic trance. So, is Dianetics hypnotic? According to Hubbard, it is. It was cancelled in 1951, reintroduced in 1977. This is the 1988 version, and Chris is going to help us through it.
All right, so we're just going to go through the steps of this. You just go along, okay? All right, good. So, so you're going to know everything that happens while we're going through this procedure, okay? Okay, good. So look at the ceiling. When I count from 1 to 7, your eyes will close. You will remain aware of everything that goes on. You will be able to remember everything that happens here. You can pull yourself out of anything which you get into if you don't like it. Ready?
Ready.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, just close your eyes.
I have to?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to.
Oh, yeah. Close
Do
your
what you're told.
All right. In the future, when I utter the word canceled,
Okay, let me interrupt,
Yeah.
because this is one of the most standard hypnotic induction techniques taught. Look at the ceiling, slowly flutter your eyelids close. And it's usually practice in the ethical way about breathing. You know, take a breath, look up, let your eyelids close, then exhale, and as you do, you become more relaxed and comfortable and enter into a very comfortable state of trance.
This is the technique that was used by Freud in the 1890s. He'd studied with Szurko in Paris, the hypnotist, and he used this technique, and he did not recognize it as hypnotic, the counting technique, all of it. However, he did point something out, which is quite interesting, which is he abandoned the technique because it didn't do any good. He said that while it made the person who was doing it to feel euphoric, it didn't have any therapeutic benefit, and it increased the transference, which is to say, it increased the dependence of the client, patient, upon the analysand, or whatever you want to call them, the analysand upon the psychoanalyst.
And I would also say that we don't have the time, but hypnosis has undergone a revolution over the decades away from a direct suggestion and a command authority thing of your eyelids are getting heavy. And if the person doesn't trust the hypnotist, they're going to be like, no, my eyelids are not. And then they were labeled non-suggestible or non-hypnotizable. But the reality is very few people are not hypnotizable.
It suggested perhaps 10%, but
Right.
90% are fairly
Most
regular.
people are hypnotizable, but it's more about how it's happening and who's in control and whether there's a sense of safety. And those words that the cult members are taught to read are meant to relax the person. You're aware of everything, don't worry, you won't be asked to do anything that you wouldn't ordinarily do, or whatever. But that's kind of just nonsense, because people can be made to do all kinds of things they would never normally do
Exactly.
in trance, as we all know, having been in a cult.
so I'll continue here. So I got the guy with his eyes closed, so I say, in the future, when I utter the word canceled, everything I have said to you while you're in a therapy session will be canceled and will have no force with you.
That's called a post-hypnotic suggestion, by the way.
Yeah.
In the
I'm
future,
giving you a suggestion that you won't react to suggestions. Get with that one?
Any suggestion I have made to you will be without force when I say the word canceled. Do you understand?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. We're going to find an incident in your life of which you have an exact record. Then, by sending you through it to the moment it happens several times, we're going to reduce it. Now, I would just like to say
Please.
that kind of thing in Scientology, or that kind of like telling the person what's going to happen in the session, kind of sets them up for making sure that that's what happens in the session. Does that make sense?
I use the phrase expectation, conditions, experience.
Okay. In Scientology, they call it a reality factor, an R factor, or some, you're telling the guy what's going to happen next. Or they just use the word indoctrination.
And then within the double bind is that within the auditor's code, it says never evaluate for the prequel.
Exactly. It's wild how they get away with that. So, okay, so now I've told you what's going to happen. Okay, here's the first command here. So, locate an incident that you feel you can comfortably face.
Okay.
Excellent. Go to the beginning of that incident.
Got it.
Okay, good. So tell me what you got.
I was about 6 years old. We were going for a trip to the shore for the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell it to me as though it was happening to you right now?
I can.
Excellent.
So that's a trance state where you're going back in time to reassociate, so the person isn't in this space and time. That's another absolute hypnotic technique.
Exactly.
Called age regression.
I'm sitting in the back seat of the car with my brother, and we're squabbling over our chess game, and we're getting louder and louder. And my father says, "You're making so much noise that you really have to stop, or I'm going to turn the car around and we'll go back home." And we stop for a bit, and then we start arguing again. And finally, we were arguing so loudly, my father says, "This is your last warning. If you keep doing that, I'm turning the car around." And I don't believe he's going to do that because we're all looking forward to this trip to the shore. And my brother and I start arguing again, and all of a sudden, my father turns on the indicator on the car, and we swerve off at the next exit, and we turn the car around, and we're going home now again. And my brother, who's 8 years older than I am, is saying to my father that it's okay, that he'll stop. We're going to put the chessboard away, and he'll stop. And I'm crying by this time because I really wanted to go to the shore. And my father says, "We'll go to the shore next week." And that's all he says about it. And we carry on driving home. We're just unpacking the car, and I'm really upset still because I was looking forward to that trip. And we go in the house, and that's the end of it.
Okay. And you would keep going through that, and we're rushed for time, so
Yeah.
I'm
We
afraid
would-
we're going to leave you in the middle of that, Christian.
Come back to the room now.
Yeah.
Cancelled.
Exactly. So we would actually keep going through that incident over and over again, picking up any other details he can give me and keep recounting it until he reaches a state where he feels cheerful about it. That's the whole point.
I'm actually
of
quite
doing
cheerful
that.
about it now, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, you're not cheerful enough, so we're going to keep going through it.
Would you like to attest?
And then we might find another incident, do the same thing over and over again.
And this whole methodology is using an out-of-date, but in the time that Hubbard came up with this stuff, idea about the human brain and the human experience, that if you go back through an experience over and over, it's like your mind is like a battery and it loses its charge. And that is not how the mind works, and it is not an effective technique if you want to heal from any past trauma. It re-traumatizes the person till they're numb and dissociated about it.
In fact, there's a technique called debriefing that was pretty thoroughly discredited in the 1990s and has changed all of counselling. The idea was immediately after something had happened, you would sit the person down and get them to recount it, to debrief it. And what was found, that people that this had been done to were left with PTSD, whereas people who had just not asked anything had a better recovery. It's changed all of counselling, this notion of, and the perversity is in Dianetics 55, published in 1955, Hubbard explains this. He says that telling people to go through traumatic incidents traumatizes them. And then he's sort of, well, okay, let's do it anyway. Exactly. We'll avoid the modern version of that, routine 3R.
Excuse me, he has to undo all of this and cancel it and everything
I
else.
cancelled it, weren't you listening? Well, you can cancel it too. Don't feel left out.
No, you guys can't cancel this. He has to cancel it.
All right. No, I got it. Okay, so canceled. Okay, good.
Weren't you supposed to count me out so I could open my eyes again, by the way?
Oh dear, picky. You can't see it.
just a
You
demo.
can't be the case supervisor for your own case. It's against the
Hubbard
rules.
did it.
I'm just quickly going to look at this, and I'm going to have them do something else that's fun in a minute. These are grade 2 processors, which was, I was a class 2 auditor. I could do this. And it was funny, we looked at them on the plane coming over. And there really seem quite unpleasant things in here. You've got to think of something this person has done to you, think of something this person has withheld from you.
And every time you're asked a question, you have to go inside to locate something.
Yeah,
and
age
by
regression
doing that,
every time.
you're going into an altered state of consciousness. And if you think of the continuum, if it's done with an ethical therapist who has your best interest at heart, that wants you to get better and get out of therapy, it's going to have very positive effects. And if it's done by a cult that has an agenda to keep you dependent and obedient for eternity, it's going to make you worse and more dependent and obedient. But the techniques, many of them are not bad in and of themselves if they're used honoring the person's unique, authentic self, empowering the person to have locus of control, which cult members think they are doing by joining the group, that they're learning self-determination and blah, blah. It's just, that's the lie.
There is no good way of doing OT3, though, just in case you were thinking. This was the process.
OT3 doesn't exist. It's
Doesn't?
a construction of a crazy person.
OT3 as a process does exist.
Sorry.
That it didn't actually happen is another thing, but it does exist because Aaron Hubbard invented it, or stole it from a science fiction writer. We were sat on the plane coming over and reading through these. We found this thing where you get the person, get the idea of terminal, depersonalization. We have objects, not people in Scientology. Get the idea of a person having done something to you. Get the idea of someone having withheld something from you. So you're actively getting somebody saying, get the idea of your mum doing something nasty to you. You know, you're actually moving into the imaginary process. I just wanted to point that out, that you've not only got recollection of real incidents, which will very quickly get into false memories, because you believe, like, and now think of something, is there an earlier similar incident? Is there an earlier similar incident? And you're meant to recollect things that happened in past lives. Now, I've said this before many times, but my experience as an auditor, I became somewhat skeptical because I'd talk to people and say, what did you do yesterday? And they go, what did you have for breakfast? And you say, what did you do a trillion years ago? Oh, I was on this spaceship, and, you know. And there's also, you're encouraged to just say the first thing that comes into your head. Which is not really very healthy. Right, we're going to do...
Just as a short comment on that, because you had given me those papers beforehand, I was able to answer you when you asked me for an incident, but otherwise I would have been sitting here. It took me about probably 10 minutes to come up with something at the time, because I have in fact gone through most of my life, all the things that would normally be important, and there's nothing really there. But
at least to do that for you.
At least I got hold of this thing which we could use. But otherwise, I would have had to either make something up, or I don't know, kind of sit here for half an hour scrounging around in my memory.
And if that's what, in a real dynamic session, if that's what it had taken you to recall something, I would have sat here patiently waiting for you to recall it. I mean, I wouldn't have been like, come on, talk.
I mean, you get the idea
it's
that...
not that overtly
I think
abusive.
Jim would have been saying, come on.
Yeah.
No, of course, I'm just saying.
You can be doing 5-6 hours a day of this every day of the week until there's nothing left of you. We now have to move out of the way and let them do this performance here. I found you a bottle.
Book and bottle. All right.
And this book would not normally be used in the session, but they're going to demonstrate what is called opening procedure by duplication. It's called Opro by dupe. Notice that word dupe in there. If you want to stand at one end and
you
together.
stand over here.
Now you'd have done all of your training routines and you've learned how to control another person with tone, 40 and tension. and with 8C, which is infinite control. And it will be physical. You will make the person do this thing. In 9 years in Scientology, Hubbard said that you can always tell a suppressive by how fat their ethics folder is. My ethics folder had 2 knowledge reports in 9 years. One of them was just before I left Scientology that I complained that they weren't following policy to my doctor, who was a Scientologist. She reported me, so much for the confidentiality of the medical profession. But I wasn't saying anything nasty. I was saying, oh, have you seen this policy letter here? And they don't seem to be following it, which to me seems to be a good thing. The only other knowledge report in my folder was to do with this procedure. Shortly after, about 6 months after I got in, I audited this on a guy, and I gave him 5 2-hour sessions of this. And afterwards I said to a friend, that was the most boring thing I've done in my life. And I got a knowledge report. You'll see what I meant. Take it away.
All right, so I'm gonna give you commands and just run through this process, okay? Good. So look at that book. Thank you. Walk over to it. Thank you. Pick it up. Thank you. What is its color?
It's blue.
Excellent.
With
What is
some
its? Okay, good. What is its temperature?
It's about room temperature.
Okay, good. What's its weight?
Maybe about a pound and an ounce or something like that.
Okay, good. Put it down in exactly the same place.
2 hours.
Thank you. Look at that bottle.
2
Yes.
hours.
Thank you. Walk over to it. Thank you. Pick it up. Thank you. What is its color?
It's transparent, it's got a white cap, it's got a blue and white label.
Excellent. What is its temperature?
A little bit cooler than room temperature.
Okay, good. And what is its weight?
I'm bored already.
Maybe
10
a quarter
hours.
of a pound.
Okay,
Maybe
good.
less.
Put it down in exactly the same place.
Okay, thank you guys.
Good. Back and forth, back and forth.
For 2 hours in a normal session.
Programming, obedience.
Absolutely, and if there is any resistance, you physically control the person to do it, which would not be considered ethical in most counselling disciplines. But this is an entry point. This is an extremely important procedure because this is the first procedure you will do, or process as Hubbard called it, where you are meant to exteriorize. And what generally that means, and I've interviewed hundreds of Scientologists in and out of Scientology, probably about 1,000, about exteriorization, because it is the goal of Scientology. And people will tell you, you're kind of going, oh, well, they'll float off around the room and they'll give descriptions and all this thing, and you'll expect, this is going to happen. The only person, I've had a couple of people who've described so-called out-of-the-body experiences, none of them actually as a consequence of auditing sessions. There was a time when Otto Roast told me that he saw the Apollo split in half, but I think that's called hallucination.
That's a hypnotic phenomenon. There's
Absolutely.
Positive hypnotic hallucination and negative hypnotic hallucination. Positive hallucination is anything in the 5 senses. That you see something that isn't there, that's called a positive visual hypnotic phenomenon. Something you hear that isn't there, that's an auditory hallucination. Negative visual would be like if I'm being interviewed by a TV show, I'll negatively hallucinate the TV cameras so I don't get nervous, so I won't see them.
Yeah, you blank something out, that you see something that's not, experience something that's not there, or you make something that is there disappear.
It's an altered state of consciousness technique.
Much safer and cheaper ways of doing this. It's called taking drugs.
But I would argue there are positive uses that are ethical for hypnotic phenomenon. Like if you are a golfer and you need to hallucinate the line that the ball is going to go to get in on the curve of the grass, you're going to want to hallucinate the line that you should be putting. And there are many other examples. Free throws in basketball, I visualize it going in before I do it. So it's not evil, but you're suggestible to influence an indoctrination.
And it's a matter of who's in control.
Exactly.
What I normally heard when I asked people about exteriorization, hundreds of times, was that they felt as if they were out of their body. So when I saw a psychiatric definition of depersonalization, I was a bit shocked because all of the sensations that are listed as this beneficial exteriorization are actually considered an aspect of psychosis. by psychiatry. And I think that's a good point to end on.
Okay,
Thank
let me
you.
just say, folks,
We're late now, Jim. You haven't got
no,
time.
no. Oh, hang on.
I'm sorry for bullying you, Jim. It's wrong of me.
For what? Calling?
Bullying you. I shouldn't be doing
Oh.
it. It just amuses me. What can I say?
I like bull baiting, John.
Good. That's okay.
Okay, right after lunch, back at 1:30, Nora Kress is going to talk about her experience as a second generation.
Chris Shelton's going to talk about his experience as second generation, and Christian's going to talk about his lack of experience as second generation.
Okay? Now, just one more thing. You know, I started studying cult groups about the same year as Steve. I think he did it a bit earlier. But he was a hero to me in the early days when there were huge battles. And in some circles, if you critique cults, it was fine. But in many circles, you were viewed as a bigot, loser, etc. And what I know motivated Steve and kept him strong is when you see real junk that's hurting people, you'll stand up even if people call you a jerk. So Steve's leaving soon. When you going?
I'm taking a shuttle at 8:20, but I just want to say, I was educated about the Holocaust. I learned, I read Animal Farm, I read so many books about mind control, 1984 and everything else. And to come out of a cult and realize that even though I had learned about these things and how bad they were, that happened to me, it propelled me to want to speak out because I know that I'm not stupid.
Well,
I know that I'm a good person.
Steve has helped people all over the world, millions through his books. So he's leaving us tonight, so let's wish him goodbye.
Thank you.
And could we also have a hand for our perpetrator and our victim? Sorry, our auditor and our pre-clear.
And for John for putting this together.
Thank you.